Welcome to the Healthy Living with Hoot podcast, where we will bring you some of the most incredible guests and content anywhere. We hope by the end of the show that you feel like you've been inspired, motivated, and that we've added value to your life so that you can be the best version of yourself. So whether you're cooking, cleaning, exercising, or driving, let's do this together in the Healthy Living with Hoot podcast. All right, let's rock and roll. We're so honored on this 18th day of Mental Health Awareness Month to welcome Dr. K, not to be confused with JFK, Dr. Russ Kennedy, anxiety expert, MD, neuroscientist, and author of the book, which I've downloaded onto Audible, Anxiety RX, which again, you can find on Audible and on Amazon, which he himself narrates. We will not only take a deep dive into Doc's own personal struggles, but how those eventually became his thoughtful superpowers. And today you will hear the rest of the story. You can find him on Instagram and Twitter at The Anxiety MD. I love that moniker. And on his website, dr-russ.com, where you can ease your anxiety today with a free MP3. He's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. And I hope you and the wife had a fabulous vacation. And welcome to Healthy Living with Who. Truly honored that you're here with us today.
Thanks, man. Yeah, sorry about last week. I don't know what the hell happened. I'm psyched to be talking to you, man.
Yeah, we're definitely excited. There's a lot of people have been looking forward to this. And so you probably wanted to be an anxiety doctor when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, you know the story. I mean, I know a bit of your background too, so I know about your history with dads, right? Like I had one dad, but he was, schizophrenic and bipolar and kind of loving and caring and attentive when he wasn't sick. But when he was sick, it was really difficult to connect with him in any way. So what happened to me, the short version of this is that because I loved him so much, I had to start protecting myself. So I couldn't love him and then see him go into a deep depression or a horrible manic episode or psychotic or be admitted to the hospital. So what I did was I started withdrawing from him in a way. And you can't withdraw love from one person, especially as a child, without, kind of numbing your whole world, which is kind of what I did. So what happened?
All or nothing?
Yeah.
All or nothing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have this little theory, and you might have heard me on Clubhouse talk about it. It's like your psyche is either there's love and there's fear. That's it. There is nothing else but love and fear. So when you push in fear, you push out love. And when you push in love, you can push out fear. So, but because our brains, from a neuroscience point of view, have a bias towards fear, which kept us alive evolutionarily, we tend to pay more attention, give more credibility to fearful things than we do loving things. So if we're not careful over the course of time, that box gets filled up with fear and love just gets insidiously kind of pushed out. And when love is pushed out, alarm and anxiety and all that kind of stuff, depression, eating disorders, OCD, all that kind of stuff finds its way in.
Well, that's a lot to unravel.
That's my intro. How was that?
That was great. But so I wanted to ask, for people that don't know what bipolar and schizophrenic is this a synergistic type of situation where it's not just 1 + 1, but it's more of 1 + 1 can be so volatile that it's like a 10?
Well, I mean, I think here's the story of my dad. He was born October 5th, 1934. And when he was born, he weighed 26 ounces. So that's essentially 1.5 pounds. In 1934, we had no neonatal ICUs, nothing like that. My grandmother took him home in a shoebox. They told him he's probably not going to survive. My grandmother told me that she could get her wedding ring up to his shoulder. Right. Wow. So he was, it was a miracle he survived, really. And, but he did have some problems. So typically schizophrenia and bipolar don't occur together. I just think that his makeup when he was born was so traumatic. And, I think his closest sister was 15 years older than him. So he really, he got at both nature and nurture. So, it was a miracle he survived, but he did have significant emotional problems. Even though when you talk to him, he was normal. He had the #1 radio show in Sudbury for a long time. And wow. Peter Jennings was there at the time. And he said that my dad had the smoothest voice he had ever heard.
Wow. That's fascinating. So you ran for the hills.
I kind of did a combination of things. So I would withdraw, but I would also sort of engage this rescuer kind of helper.
Do you think that's a nature versus nurture kind of thing, or because I had the same kind of thing? Like I went into, after my father took his own life, I went into, just helping people.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sublimate based on our own personality. Like if your personality has that kind of loving, giving quality to it, you'll make the best of it by helping other people. If you don't have that quality to it, you probably won't. So I think there is a bit of nature in that, what's your nature like? Is it, sharing and kind of giving and that kind of thing? If that's the case, then you're much more likely to turn that tragedy into something more beneficial. Like I saw you had a interview with Jeremy Burright, and Jeremy did the same thing, right? Like he became a leader because he needed to be that leader, and he took all that angst and he put it into helping other people.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing some amazing things,
Yeah.
simultaneously dealing with his own stuff.
Yep.
So it's cool. Makes him a better basketball player as well,
Sure does.
especially under pressure, I would imagine. So you're in Canada the entire time, right?
Yep. Yeah. I've been living in Canada for my entire life.
And so how is mental health viewed there versus, say, the United States?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how the US really does it. I know here it's it's looked at in a very medical way. We treat with a lot of medications, and when I was a medical doctor, that was kind of our go-to, is we would go to medications as opposed to therapy and counseling, because as a medical doctor, I didn't have a lot of time to deal with people's emotional issues. So I would only have, I worked in a clinic, like an urgent care clinic. So I would only have about 10 to 15 minutes with each patient. So I would see a lot of people with, lacerations and bladder infections and pneumonia and that kind of thing.
The thing I thought about when you were just speaking was, because I don't want to skip, because I want to talk about the medical part that you were talking about. But
Yeah, sure.
but was there a light that went on during these 15-minute sessions where you're like, man, this can't be it?
Oh yeah. I mean, there was, and to tell you the truth, there were a lot of people that came in to see me with anxiety, even when I was working at the urgent care clinic. So I kind of stretched it out to, 20 minutes, maybe half an hour if somebody was really suffering. And I remember looking at my because on the computer it tells you how many people are waiting to see you and how long they've been waiting. So I remember at some points there was like 3 hour wait. Like this person's been here and there's a 3 hour wait to see me, and they would still wait to see me. So it was like I was fairly popular, but I felt badly, like if I know people are waiting 3 hours to see me, then I kind of started to rush a little bit, and then everything else goes off. So there's no reason. It's understandable that I went into burnout, because I couldn't. A lot of my gift is actually helping people with emotional issues, right? So bladder infections and birth control, prescription renewals, and all that kind of stuff, that was pretty easy stuff. But what I really liked doing was helping people with their emotional issues, and you can't do that in 15 minutes. So I burned out. I left practice in 2013, and completely burned out, and really did ayahuasca, did LSD, all that kind of stuff, because I had to find myself again. I had to find why I suffered so much with anxiety. And what LSD showed me was the anxiety was actually not in my mind at all, but it's old trauma that was stored in my body. And I found, like, LSD showed me it's this purple fist-sized density that's in my solar plexus. And I don't know what LSD does. I mean, I do know what LSD does to you from a neuroscientific point of view, but it was one of these things where you get this revelation. It's like, oh my God, I've been trying to fix my thoughts all my life, and the thoughts haven't been the problem. It's no wonder why I still suffer with anxiety decade after decade, because I'm trying to solve the wrong problem. It's like having a fire on 3rd Street and sending all the fire engines to 1st Street. You're not going to heal the problem.
Wait, okay, so for people that have thought traditional means is the key to unlock the answers to all of our problems.
Right.
So you're saying, for example, and I think I've heard you talk about this, you have to stop yourself, acknowledge it when it's happening, in this case, anxiety,
Yep.
And do something physical.
Well, I think you have to get out of your head and into your body. Like that is probably the key message that I tell people is that when you're trapped in thought, and one of the sayings I love to say is that you can't beat thoughts on their own turf. Like when you go into your own thoughts and you're trying to fight with your brain, and part of your brain, your ego brain, is trying to protect you with worries, and the other part of it is trying to reassure you by telling you that those worries aren't real, of course you're going to get into this loop in your head and you're never going to
Right.
solve anything, right? So the trick, I believe, is to move into your body, move into the sensation of your body, like your breath, like put your hand on your chest, like really connect with your sensation, because sensation will bring you into the present moment. So when you're in the present moment, you have such more resonance in your nervous system to be able to deal with stuff. But if you're trapped in your head and your head's arguing with thoughts like you're sick, no, you're not, you're sick, no, you're not, you're sick, no, you're not, all this kind of stuff, like you're never, ever going to get to a place of peace. So the only real way of understanding that is realizing that anxiety is really a state of alarm that's in your body. Address that state of alarm, with like breath or touch or whatever. And I know I'm sounding pretty woo-woo here for a medical doctor, but it's really about getting out of your head and into your body. But the problem with that, and the reason why most people don't do it, is because a lot of the old trauma from our childhood is stored in our body. So we don't want to go back down into feeling town, because that's what really hurt. But that's exactly what we have to do in order to get out of that constant loop in our minds of trying to worry ourselves out of a problem and trying to fix a feeling problem with a thinking solution, because it doesn't work that way.
Okay, so so the thing that I thought about was wounds, traumas, and triggers.
Sure.
But before that, now between 13, when you burned out, and now, was that when you went spiritually on a journey to find yourself, or was
Yeah,
that
and
before?
I would say, and scientifically too. I mean, I lived at a temple in India for a while, and I kind of studied the science of spirit there, and then all the while, I've always, I've got a degree in neuroscience, so I've always been really interested in neuroscience and how the brain works and how it creates these circuits that actually cause more problems than they solve. So it's a combination of, yeah, spirit, but there's also a tremendous amount of science behind it too. When we look at the body as a reflection of our old trauma and how it holds that old trauma and almost sort of rations it out to the brain, and the brain has to do something with that trauma, and typically what it does is it creates stress and worry, which of course just creates more alarm in the body, and you get caught in what I call this alarm anxiety loop. So the alarm in your body that's been stored there from your old trauma energizes these negative thoughts in your mind, because your mind is a meaning making, make sense machine, and it reads your body all the time. And if there's old trauma stuck in your body that's pretty significant, which both you and I have, the mind creates these negative thoughts, which aggravates this survival alarm state in the body, which of course creates more negative thoughts. On top of that, when we get into a survival alarm state in our body, we shut off our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that allows us to really be present and be rational. So on top of being in an alarm survival state, the worries that we create appear more real, because the parts of our brain that would say, hey, this actually isn't happening, this isn't accurate, are shut off. So we get kind of double whammied in a way. Okay, so it looks like my power came back.
We have the lighting
So,
back,
yeah,
ladies and
so
gentlemen. To be a stand-up comedian, man, you must have had some phenomenal content. Man, that
it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. I mean, I think one of my jokes that I really liked was the fact that I have health anxiety and I'm a doctor at the same time, which was, which is a really bad combination, because, I don't just get regular diseases. I get the fancy, dermatomyositis. I get all the fancy fatal diseases. I don't get the easy ones. And what I would do is I would order tests on myself, because here in Canada, the tests are free because,
Right.
you need a doctor to order them, but they allow you to order tests on yourself. So, I got an MRI on my head if I had a headache for more than a couple of days. If my stomach was bugging me, I get an ultrasound. I think you could throw a couple of pap smears in there too. At some point, I was very paranoid about things.
God damn.
So that's kind of, that's a very short version of that joke, but comedy was one of those things that allowed me to really exercise the right part of my brain, because the left part, as being a medical doctor, is very analytical. It's very left brain. It's very linear. It's very logical. And I think that was, my artistic side really didn't get fed too much by the real highly analytical side of being a medical doctor. So that was another reason why I burned out. That, and the fact that I could only spend, 7 to 10 minutes with every patient. And it was really, really hard. So yeah, that was one of the reasons I really just thought, I just can't do this anymore. And when I left medicine in 2013, because I ruptured my left Achilles tendon, and that was like, okay, I'm out. That was the reason that finally knocked me out. I've been burned out for like probably 5 years before that, but until I ruptured my Achilles tendon, that was the straw that broke the doctor's back at that point. Like, that was done. And that led me on this journey to where I am now, which is writing the book and doing the clubhouse rooms and really helping people with the anxiety disorder that I struggled with from my childhood. So I really, as you said, as we started this thing before all the power outages and the things, it's like, I really wanted, I really have this sense in me to be connected and helping other people. And I really wasn't feeling like I was doing that as a medical doctor. I felt like I was giving people pharmaceuticals to cover up the symptoms, and the symptoms were there to tell them that they weren't being consistent with themselves, with their own values. Because I think that's where, anxiety and depression and OCD and eating disorders all show up as a compensatory mechanism for just not being who you really are.
Yeah, wow, that is phenomenal stuff. So the question I have is, you talked about you have to get to the physical. And so my question is, does that bring everything to the forefront? So then now you're living in the present, so to speak, because it's not suppressed, and now it's literally right there in front of you when you focus on your breathing. Like, for example, the breathing, because you and I both teach yoga. So
Yep.
meditation is a big part of it. So that brings it to the forefront. So now you have a choice. You're at a crossroads. Either bury it again,
Yep.
or you have a monologue with yourself, or you say, wow, this has come back 6 times now. Maybe I should actually address the issue.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it too. I think that's a brilliant question, because, we're asking people to go into the source of their pain. So, I've got this guy in my courses, program, whatever, who was bullied quite a bit when he was younger. And it's like, I don't want to go back to that poor, skinny little boy who cried and was bullied. I don't want to go back there. And I said, I don't blame you. But I said, until we compassionately go back there and make friends with that part of us that was, abused, lost, abandoned, had to grow up too fast, rejected, until we go back and find that younger version of ourselves. I hate using the word inner child because it really fires people up, but that younger version of ourselves, until we go back and kind of connect with them again, that alarm energy is always going to be in us. And the only way to really dissipate that alarm, which is the underpinning of our anxiety in the first place, is to go back there. So we have to have this place where we feel comfortable in our bodies. And I think that's a lot of what I teach and show people is, yeah, the alarm is in there. For me, my alarm is in my solar plexus, but I can actually go back to a place in my sinuses where I breathe when I'm in meditation. So I can go back and forth between that pleasant place in my sinuses and that old place of pain in my solar plexus, because I do believe that the unconscious mind goes back to that place of our trauma and takes us back there. So when we get into these really intense situations of panic and alarm, we regress back into that place in our childhood where those alarms started. So if we can go back and find that child and rescue that child, then we can dissipate some of that alarm. And when the alarm dissipates, the anxiety, the anxious thoughts go with it.
And so you reassure people right when they come in that this may feel like a step backwards initially,
Totally.
but it's going to be 2 steps backwards initially, but it's going to
Totally.
be 2 steps forward.
Totally. And that's kind of how healing goes. It's kind of like, healing from emotional pain is this kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing, because our protective ego, the part of us that doesn't want us to go back into that pain again, just keeps sabotaging us back into pain again. Even when we're getting better, this is the biggest thing that I have, the biggest obstacle in helping people move through their anxiety is that protective ego knows that it feels uncomfortable being anxious, but it's familiar. It's kind of, and there's a kind of security in that familiarity. So when you're getting better, when you're not anxious, when you're, and in my book, I call it, being afraid to not be afraid. So when you feel calm, when we were children, we were kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. So we create this hypervigilance. And as I release that hypervigilance in you, the ego is going to be like, hey, we can't leave our worry because our worry was keeping us safe. So it's kind of like 2 steps forward. You move into this new place where you feel like I don't have to worry so much. And then the ego will come up and drag you back into, yes, you do. And then over the course of time, as you ground yourself in your body, you realize that, hey, you know what? I really don't have to worry so much.
So I thought of a scenario. You're in the
Sure.
middle of deep breathing during a yoga session, and during Shavasana, you start crying hysterically.
Yeah.
What is a person supposed to do in any of the physical solutions that you give them when they have that moment of I don't know, a deeper layer of
Yeah.
trauma that comes out, and how do they handle it at that moment? Because the only thing they want to do is run,
Well,
losers.
it's like a panic attack. In that moment, there's probably not a tremendous amount that you can do to help things long term. But in the short term, it's basically, putting your hand on your chest, really reassuring, because it's coming from the child in you that's finally having the opportunity to release these things. Because you put the brake on as adults, we put the brake on, the emotional brake on so hard because we don't want to feel that pain anymore. When you're in yoga and you've opened, that the old saying that we have issues in our tissues, and when you open your joints, you kind of and stretch your connective tissue, and it's called connective tissue for a reason, because it does connect us to ourselves. And when we open that place, a lot of emotion can come out. So it's like trying to let it come out for sure. I mean, I had lots and lots of people when I taught yoga that would go into tears, either in it or in Shavasana or wherever. And it was just like, I would say, just like, let it go, let it come through you. And I think everybody in a yoga class kind of understands that this is going to happen, because most of them have had that experience, maybe not, breaking down into sobbing, but, that feeling of just being emotionally open and bare, and also at the same time feeling relaxed and comfortable. And I think that's a lot of things about yoga is it allows us to kind of get that feeling of safety in our body. But if you didn't feeling safe and calm was safe when you were younger,
Right.
it's gonna bring up a lot of that old energy. So it's a matter of like, can you let that come through? So what I would teach people in advance is finding your alarm. Like, where is it? For me, it's in my solar plexus. For a lot of people, it's in their throat or their heart area or even their belly. It's finding that alarm, because I do believe that that alarm is a manifestation of your younger self. Because really, I think here's the short version of what I believe happens to us. So when we're children, we experience a trauma that's too much for our little minds to bear, right? So we stuff it down into the unconscious. And because the body is a representation of the unconscious mind, a lot of that stuff gets offloaded into the body. And Bessel van der Kolk talks about this more scientifically in the book, The Body Keeps the Score. But really, I think this is what happens. So to get to those old programs, to change them, we have to use the body, or we can use the body. So I get people to localize, where do you feel that alarm in your body? And this is what I saw in LSD, right? I saw, for me, it's in my solar plexus. For other people, it's in their heart. For other people, it's in their throat. For other people, it's in their belly. It's like finding it. And then once you find it, you can use it as a point of connection with your younger self. And when that younger self feels connected and safe, then you're actually solving the problem at its root. You're not just kind of putting thoughts in there like, oh, I'm safe, I'm happy, I'm doing all these affirmations. You're not putting a band-aid over the problem. You're actually dealing with the root cause of the anxiety, which is this younger self in you that experienced a trauma that was too much to bear. Your amygdala in your brain recorded that. And because the amygdala has no sense of time, basically you go back to that same place when you're triggered in that event. If someone mentioned suicide to me, part of me gets lit up. That part of me that's, was younger and knew that my dad was on that route and there was nothing I could do about it. So can I go back and put my hand over that place, find that younger version of myself and really reassure him that, you know what, it's okay. We're through that. We're past it. It's in our past, because it's really important for our brains to understand that what happened in the past is truly in the past. Because as I said, the amygdala has no sense of time. So when you get triggered by something, that amygdala picks it up immediately and it will send you back into the age that you had that trauma. And until you can pull yourself back up and bring yourself into the present moment, that trauma is always going to fire up your survival nervous system.
I let that breathe for a second.
Yeah, there was a lot there. There's a lot
So
there.
some things are Sharpies and some things are dry erase markers.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting when you said, let it go and talked about that. And that's the verbal commands that you would actually give people. Number 6 of the 6 dads. So he was a healer and he did vibratory. And so that's one of the things that he would say in his sessions with not only me and my mom, with everyone is go with it, let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go. Because, you want to stop yourself from the crying. That's what we're taught to do. You're like, and then you just like, stop yourself. No, don't stop yourself, cry hysterically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because crying is adaptive. I mean, my mentor in developmental psychology, Dr. Gordon Neufeld at the Neufeld Institute over in Vancouver, he talks a lot about crying, about how the external environment hasn't changed. You're still going through a divorce. Your pet has just died. Like nothing in your external environment has changed, but tears do something to the brain. Like the chemical composition of tears of joy are completely different than the chemical composition of tears of sadness. They've analyzed this. Like it does make a difference. So crying is an adaptive way that our brains can handle things that are outside of our control. Our pet's dead. There's nothing we can do about that. So when something is completely outside of your control, tears help us understand from almost like a subcortical non-defensive way that we can handle it. We can sit with the pain. And as you learn to sit with the pain, you get ascended through the layers of, okay, it will always hurt, but it just doesn't have that same intensity that it used to. And so much of what hurts us is resistance. I mean, the Buddhists talk about this too, right? The pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. And suffering is resistance. It really is.
LSD, please. Thank you.
Well, not that I'm an advocate for that either. Like people say, because you had such a good experience on it, which I didn't actually. Ayahuasca, LSD, psilocybin were tremendously frightening for me. But I knew I had to go there so I kind of took one for the team in a way to kind of explain why our present methods of healing anxiety aren't working. Because we're trying to fix the thoughts, and the thoughts really aren't the root problem. So the little analogy I often use is you're in a rowboat, there's a hole in the rowboat, it's filling up with water. You can bail out water. If you have cans, you can bail out the water and feel a little bit better, which is essentially, learning how to deal with your thoughts. Or you can go underneath and patch that hole in the boat, which is the old alarm that's stuck in your body. Once you do that, you patch the problem at its source, and you're not sort of having to bail water for the rest of your life.
And so when you thoughtfully deal with the wounds, if they're brought up again, you're able to navigate those spaces in a less triggered way, and you don't really have to revisit them unless they just happen to come up, but it helps you with the next scenario that's in a similar kind of space.
Yeah, I think it's just, when people know, and people will email me like a year or 2 years after I work with them and say, I had my mother come over and stay with me. And I was surprisingly able to kind of just roll with whatever, she'd go through the house, is like, this is not clean, or this isn't it. And I could just roll with it. And I said, well, that's how you know that you've healed, when the old triggers just don't trigger you so much anymore. And you, instead of triggering the old survival mechanism, it triggers a sense of awareness, like, oh, this used to really, can I swear on this?
Oh yeah.
This used to really fuck me up. Right.
Yeah,
And it's almost
absolutely.
like, it almost induces a humor reaction, because that's what they'll say. It's like the adaptation has occurred so that these triggers are no longer poking at that 12-year-old inside of you anymore. It's like you've reparent, as Nicole LePera would say, you've reparented that 12-year-old. You've brought them into the present moment so that they can see those things in observation, and this ability to see things clearly without all the emotional crap on top of it. Because as soon as we go into alarm, we, like I said earlier, we lose that prefrontal cortex, we lose that ability to be rational. So we go right back into our primitive emotional mind. And that's not going to help us when we're dealing with anxiety and alarm and that kind of thing. It's just going to make it worse.
Yeah, I've used laughter my whole life. My best friend and I, since fifth grade, that's all we did was laugh about everything. He had trauma, I had trauma.
Yep.
And so, how do you know if you're making a daily commitment towards this healing journey versus you're being over analytical and that could paralyze you?
Well, I think that's exactly, I think it's in the question. It's like, if you're being overly analytical, you're still in it. You're still in the trauma. It's when you can
Interesting.
feel it, when you can feel it in your body and you allow it. And this is one of the things that I do with people, is I take them into a trauma. I resource them. It's kind of like a semi-hypnotic thing. And then I take them into one of their old traumas, not the worst trauma of their life, but a trauma. And then I say, okay, where do you feel that trauma? Like, where is it? And search from your chin to your pubic bone. It's usually in the midline. Sometimes what I'll see with people who had to grow up too soon and become like the man of the house or the woman of the house too soon and adopt too much responsibility, they'll get it across their shoulders, this feeling of
Mm,
alarm. And in dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people with anxiety, I started to notice different patterns with alarm. Like, if people feel it in their throat, it's like, I could never tell my parent how I felt. I could never express to them. Heart areas, abandonment, usually. If it's in the belly, it's almost like they didn't get enough to eat, or they really felt like they weren't sheltered enough. Like, it's almost like base root chakra
mhm,
kind of issues as you go lower down with the alarm. So it's
mm.
finding the alarm in your system. And then, you can do this yourself. You can basically close your eyes and go into one of your old traumas and say, what does this light up in my body? Is there like a pain or a pressure or like a temperature? Is there something in my body where this lights up? And for a lot of people that I see, it's the first time they've ever looked for a physical locus of their pain. They've always just assumed it was in their mind. And the reason why they haven't gotten better, and they eventually come to me, is because they've been trying to chase their tails, looking at trying to fix the fire on 3rd Street and sending all the fire engines to 1st Street. It doesn't work that way. You have to feel it to heal it, and you've got to go in there in a safe, guided way. And that's what I help people do. It's like, get into this sort of secure place, and then we can sort of touch our toe in the old trauma, and then we can come back out, and then we can touch our toe in it again, and then and that's how you process. You can't just all of a sudden throw someone into their trauma and expect them to heal, because it's just going to re-traumatize them, which is what I believe a lot of talk therapies do. I think just talking about the trauma over and over in a way is re-traumatizing. It's digging that groove that people already have that's torturing them even deeper.
I knew the Canadian in you would come out when you said process.
Oh yeah, or
That was
about. Yeah, about. To me, about sounds like a boat, but for you, it's like, it's a boot. It's a boot. I remember I was hosting a pilot show for A&E years ago, and they would say, everything's good, but you've got to say a but when you say about. So whenever I would come to about, I would have to say, and that's what that's all about, and still it kind of came through a little bit. But it's funny how these really like little Canadianisms come out, eh?
That is, yeah, hey, that's what I was looking for
Oh,
right
the
there.
other one,
I
yeah.
needed that.
How's
I
it
need.
going, eh? Beauty, beauty, eh? Yeah, just giving her, eh? Okay.
So, do you want to touch on sleep, diet, or exercise? And the
I mean,
importance of
sleep
those.
is massive. Sleep is
Yeah.
so important because sleep is one of those things where we do the repair, right? So when I get people
Right.
into their old trauma, when I get into their alarm and they start bringing it up, they'll start dreaming about it. They'll start dreaming. They'll start,
Right.
as we start finding this physical area in your body where your anxiety is located. And then I go into really like deep sort of sources of it. Like, does it have a temperature? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Is it consistent all the way through? Like I really drill down to the characteristics of this because like I said, I believe that the unconscious mind has a representation in the body. So we can use the body to go and access those old damaging programs that are stored in the unconscious mind that talk therapy can't get to. Like talk therapy is conscious therapy. So when you're trying to get at these old unconscious programs that you as a child stuffed into your body, you stuffed into the unconscious, talking about it really isn't going to access it. But if we use your feeling, because I think when we look at, if you look at brain imaging studies and stuff and how the insula in the brain is kind of like the mediator between the mind and the body. And I do believe that there is something in the insula that sort of records how we feel. Like I call it the emotional signature of pain when we were younger. And if we can actually get into that unconscious and feel that emotional signature again, then we have the opportunity to change it. But if we never actually get into it, if we never actually feel it or allow ourselves to feel this pain that's locked in our body, we're always going to be chasing our tails trying to fix our thoughts, because your thoughts, you're just bailing water. You're not actually fixing the hole in the boat.
Oh man, that reminds me when I was in therapy with this phenomenal therapist, and he would, have me close my eyes, and I noticed over the course of the 2 years that I was with him, because he took me back to the trauma, and I remember my dreams changing significantly. So some went away. The airplane just before crashing into the ground,
Mhm.
going straight down. So that one I would always be waking up right when the plane was just about to crash, but it would never crash. And then I had a number of dreams that went from appearing to be painful. The dream was identical, but now the exact same parts of the dreams were now soothing.
Mm.
And so that's how I knew that I was evolving in these spaces. And that's when my, like you, similar area, solar plexus, me with my belly,
Yeah.
that my symptoms, I still have to be careful what I eat, but, I've been asymptomatic from Crohn's disease since 1996. And I don't think it's
Nice.
coincidental.
That's amazing, because I think, the boy in you finally felt seen and heard and loved by you, which is basically what all children want. And when they get traumatized, from wherever the trauma is, like parental divorce or, a parent that
Mhm.
gets sick or whatever,
Six
they,
dads.
yeah, crazy dads. Yeah. It's like
And
those things. Yeah.
yeah.
We have to be able to kind of go back and find that child in us that had to shut down and say, look, you can actually, come back up. And that's where the importance of play comes in, because play is so important because it really activates the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system at the same time. Whereas, people who are anxious are highly sympathetic driven, fight or flight, it's the fight or flight
Right.
nervous system. We're highly driven by that. We don't get a lot of the parasympathetic rest and digest side. So we do get gut issues a lot. And it
Mhm.
is one of those things that, can we balance out that sympathetic parasympathetic? And I do think that what happens in this survival state that we go into is we get into this hyper reactive sympathetic fight or flight state. And then we lose that ability over time to really access that calm rest and digest state. And that's what we need. That calm rest and digest state is what allows us to heal, because we can't heal while we're always on that treadmill.
Yeah, right. Let me ask you this question before we get to the rapid fire.
Sure.
How many people either come in and they're on drugs, prescription drugs to help
Yep.
with depression, et
Yep.
cetera, or think they have to come to you and the only way to solve their problems is to get on drugs. And then in both of those scenarios, they end up not on drugs.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people that I see are on some kind of medication because they've tried everything. They've tried the ACTs, the
Mhm.
CBTs, the LMNOPs. They've tried everything. You know? They've tried everything. And they say, okay, finally, I'm going to deal with you. So I would say the vast majority of people that I see are on medication. The other thing, the other sort of population of people that I see less so is people that are just on the verge. They're on that, like, I'm just suffering so much. I don't want to go on medication. I really don't want to go on medication. And I don't have a huge problem with medication, actually. At least initially, because sometimes we need it to kind of cope, or at least give ourselves the sense that we're not spiraling completely out of control.
Right.
So I'm not completely against medications, but I do think that they numb the part of us that we need to access the most.
Unless it's
So,
LSD, ladies and gentlemen.
well, that's
Then
yeah. And they're doing a lot of work now with ketamine and that kind of thing too, like because the psychedelics are a very interesting batch of chemicals, because what they do is they separate you from your ego. They kind of paralyze your ego in a lot of ways, that protective ego.
Wow.
And when that protective ego is paralyzed, and if you look at the almost the neurology of this, there's something in our brains called the default mode network, which is basically what your brain does when it's not doing anything. So when they did this study where they put people on an MRI scanner and they gave them math problems, and they would notice how the brain kind of activated to that. And then there would be like 15 to 30 seconds between where the next math problem would start. And then they would watch, and they noticed, and this is like fairly new, like this is like early 2000s, they noticed that the brain would go into this very familiar pattern when it's waiting for the next math problem, when it doesn't have anything specific to do. And the posterior cingulate cortex, there's a lot of parts in there that are maybe associated with shame and self-blame and self-judgment. So when you paralyze those things with psychedelics, you get who your authentic self is. It comes through. And one of the things that psychedelics do is they blur the boundary between conscious and unconscious, and kind of reality and unreality, and us and them. So when we have our egos make us feel like we're separate in the world. Whereas if you're on LSD or psilocybin, at least in a pleasant journey with them, people will describe, like, I felt one with everything. I didn't feel separate from anything. So when you paralyze the ego, and that ego is the part of you that worries and is scared, you actually get to see, what would I be like if I didn't have all this trauma? What would I be like if I didn't have all this ego, right? Because this ego protection. And then people, when you see it, it's kind of like that movie, The Sixth Sense. When you know Bruce Willis is dead all the way through the whole movie, you can't watch that movie again, because it's, you know what happens. So I think when you get that felt sense of, who is my authentic self? Who am I in my authentic self without all this ego that's in there to worry and protect me? Who am I? And when you see it, you can go, I can probably go back there again when I'm not on these chemicals. And I think that's where people have these sort of miraculous recoveries. And again, like I said, I'm not a big proponent of psychedelics, because it took me 2 years to get back to normal after I did LSD and ayahuasca. So I don't recommend them lightly. But if nothing else is working, usually what I recommend with people when they say, I want to do LSD or psilocybin or whatever, there's a couple of things I recommend. One is microdosing with psilocybin, because it's fairly easy to titrate. And two is, like, do 6 months of somatic therapy. Do 6 months of like somatic experiencing or Hakomi or any of that stuff, and then at that point, decide if you really want to go back and do psychedelics, because you may not need them.
You didn't get distracted by my somatic behavior. That was impressive.
Well, like I said, I was a stand-up comic. I was a stand-up comic for 15 years. So it takes a lot to rattle me.
Absolutely. Man. Okay, let's get to the rapid fire. And
Sure.
then I had another question based on what you said about it was the DMN, not to be confused with CNN.
Yes. Which apparently is not doing well.
Absolutely not. Okay. So in one of your techniques to make someone open their mouth, is one of your techniques to make someone open their mouth as wide as possible and say the letter R, and they do that 3 or 4 times a day. It causes their parasympathetic nervous system to make them yawn, and this can help them relax. Have you ever done that?
I haven't heard that before, but if you look at the vagus nerve and its contributors in the face, the vagus nerve is the main nerve of the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system. So any mouth activity, this is why people chew gum. This is why people chew pens. If you look at this pen that I've got in my hand, I've chewed it, considerably. This is why any oral activity, this is why people smoke, I think, when to relax their stress, because it does activate that vagus nerve. And that vagus nerve kind of slows your heart rate, slows your respiratory rate, makes you feel calm. So I think that's the reason why, I think, opening your mouth and saying R and that kind of stuff, maybe that works.
Try it with me, Doc?
Yeah, if you want to. I mean, I've had 3 power outages already today. I'm pretty much up for anything.
Haven't done this on my podcast before.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if that's it's good for self-consciousness. I'll give you that much. It's very good at making people feel self-conscious. So you don't do this when you're out grocery shopping or anything like that. It's like,
or speed dating.
Yeah, or speed dating. although maybe if you're in front of somebody that you don't really want to, be with, you might go,
or you want to be with them.
Or yeah, you want
That
to
shows your true colors. Yeah. Okay. Empathy or forgiveness?
Empathy for sure. I'm not a big fan of the word forgiveness. I think that what happens with forgiveness, I think there's a connotation with you just let go of something before you're ready. And I think there's a grieving process that you have to go through your body to really let something go before you can truly, open quote, forgive, close quote, someone. I think you have to go through the grief yourself before you can really forgive someone. Now, the intention of forgiveness, I think, is good. But I think that we do it too quickly without going through the process of grief.
That's awesome. Advertisement or advertisement?
Probably advertisement. I don't know why that rings, but you got to remember, like, I'm from Canada, eh? So it's like everything, all those like grammatical stuff is going to sound really weird to me, anyway.
Favorite meal of the day?
Favorite meal of the day? Dinner for sure. For a long time, because I was so anxious in the morning, I didn't eat breakfast, right? So, and I still don't. I actually sort of I eat between kind of, I'll have lunch around 1 o'clock, and then I'll have dinner around between 6 and 7. And then I won't eat again until the next day at 1 o'clock.
Man, that sounds like me, between my lemon juice, my celery juice, my intermittent fasting. And that's how I've lost 20 pounds. It's been amazing.
Oh, nice. Maybe I should try that.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, the gut health, it's the celery juice has been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the lemon juice is, I don't know, I saw this doctor talking about, your gut and lemon juice. I tried it and I lost in 4 months 17 pounds. I was like, is this real?
Wow.
I was like,
yeah, and lemon's my favorite fruit. So
wow.
Yeah, it
Go
is.
figure. Guitar or drums?
Oh, guitar. Look at behind me. Like I've got 8 guitars, man. Yeah.
Wait, can you play something for us?
Maybe I think it's out of tune, but I can try a little bit here.
Nobody will know, Doc.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's out of tune. Yeah, it's really out of tune.
Okay. That's amazing. So did you play when you were a kid to help you escape?
I started playing as a late teenager.
Oh,
so
wow.
yeah, because it was something that I could, that I couldn't master. So it's like, I'm going to go with this until, I get a level of mastery with it, which you couldn't tell from those particular chords, because that guitar, it sits in my office, and I think
Looks good.
I think it's more of a prop for my Zoom call.
Yeah, exactly.
My electrics are upstairs. I've got a Strat Plus and a Telecaster, and those ones I play quite a bit. And sometimes you'll see me play it on Instagram, but not that much these days.
All right, a couple more. Yoga or meditation?
Okay, that one I got to think about it a little bit. I think yoga, just because, it's something you can just do for like a minute and a half while you're waiting for the microwave. You want to know my real life? Yeah. It's like, sometimes I'll just do forward fold, or, I'll pretend like I'm putting my hands in my back pockets of my jeans and pull my elbows together and do a back bend. I think back bends are the most underrated yoga pose that there is, because I think we don't move our spine in that direction at all. So I think there's all this old stuff that's kind of held in our spines there, that when you do a back bend, it really opens that stuff up.
I love it. I love bridges too.
Yeah.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone. just
Wow.
because I've never used an Android. So I just like, I've always, Mac stuff I've always used, so it's second nature to me to use Mac.
I have both. I have the flip phone for my
Oh, wow.
Android and a mini for my iPhone. It's fascinating. It's great for the audio dictation and some other things. Android's amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so what's your favorite app on your iPhone?
Favorite app on my iPhone. Let me look here and just sort of see what I've got. I mean, probably Instagram. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
you're all
thing,
over it.
I've been building my Instagram account now for about 18 months and I've got about 23,000 followers on there, which
It's amazing.
is pretty solid. Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah, I guess Instagram. I can get locked into zombie scrolling Instagram for like hours at a time, which my wife will kind of go, "Hey, what's going on?" And I go, "Oh,
So,
I'm stressed. I'm dissociated." And I'll say this, like my wife's a somatic trauma therapist, right?
wow.
Yeah, she'll say to me, "Are you dissociating into your phone?" It's like, "Yes, I absolutely am. Yes, I absolutely am." Yeah. She says,
I
"Because I know,
resemble
because
that
I
remark.
can't, I can't." She'll say, "I can't reach you." It's like, "Yep, that's what I'm doing."
Wow, that's hilarious. Sixth Sense or A Beautiful Mind, the movies.
Oh wow, I quoted that just a second.
Yes, you did.
Um, Probably Sixth Sense.
Wow.
Just because I think that we live in this illusion that we have control over our environment and we really don't. And if we can learn that that is the absolute case, that we don't have control over this environment and be
Mm,
open and not resist, I think not non-resistance, I think is probably the biggest
mm.
sort of stress reliever that I know of for sure.
Well, man, fascinating conversation. I want you to finish with the book. And we've lived through a lot the last couple of years between the pandemic and a racial reckoning, as if life isn't hard enough, by itself. Now we've
Yeah.
had to add all these layers to it. And so tell everyone about the book, and I'm starting to listen to it on Audible, and it's man, it grabbed me right away. So tell
No,
everyone
thanks.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's my journey. It's like a neuroscientist slash doctor's journey with anxiety myself. So I put in my own journey through it and the journey of a lot of my patients, and I intertwine a lot of the neuroscience that I've learned, a lot of the lessons that I've learned in anxiety that I wouldn't have otherwise known about, and that I found through psychedelics. So I really felt that it's important to put out a different view of healing anxiety, which is very counterintuitive, which is saying that anxiety has more to do with your body than your mind, is sort of survival state in your body. Not to say that your mind doesn't have much to do with it, it really does, but it's really the core of it is just finding this sort of alarm in your body. And of
Mm,
course, you can't really separate the body and the mind, but it is a great metaphor for realizing that there's trauma in there. If it doesn't come out, you're always going to be kind of bailing water out of that boat.
mm,
And you can do it, and you can feel somewhat secure. I use that word very tenuously in it because it's familiar, and a lot of
mm,
people, a lot of us will reproduce the chaos of our childhoods and our adulthoods. I mean, I've been married 3 times, right? So
mm.
the book is really about my journey with anxiety, how I finally was able to find something to heal after, 30 plus years of traditional therapies not working, and just thinking there's
Wow.
something seriously wrong with me, but there wasn't actually. It was the fact that I was just looking in the wrong place.
Oh man, that is fascinating. Well, people are going to not have to wait 30 years after reading that book. That's for
I hope
sure.
not. Well, that's my goal. And then Clubhouse, every Sunday at noon, I do a room on Clubhouse for 2,
Hmm.
sometimes 3 hours. Um, and I just tell people, I just explain this to people. And it's taking a while for the book. I mean, the book does really well in general for a self-published book, but it's
Hmm.
so counterintuitive that a lot of the mainstream places don't pick it up, because the mainstream things will tell you that anxiety is in your mind and you can fix it with your mind. And I'm here to tell you that you can't. You're just going to make it worse if you just use your mind.
That's what I was going to ask you real quick. How has it been received by other doctors in that space? Have they opened
If
their
I
minds up to it?
Yeah,
No
if I
pun
talk to
intended.
them one-on-one, they love it. But if I talk as a group, they're like, well, no, I mean, we need to use medication. We need, anxiety, of course, is an issue of the mind. How else could it not be? That kind of thing. Like they really, they don't, this is traditional medical doctors anyway, they're not the most open group of people to start with, right? So presenting a new idea, especially a controversial one like this. And I think because I am an MD, because I have a degree in neuroscience and a background in developmental psychology, I can talk to them on their same level. You know, if you want to talk about the beta nucleus of the stria terminalis, you know, in the basal ganglia, you know, producing anxiety in the body, I can talk about that. But I can also talk about, you know, your old wounding really being stored in the body. And that's the real cause of your anxiety. And the reason why you probably haven't healed from anxiety is you haven't A, found it, and B, dealt with it. And that's really what it comes down to is, yeah, cognitive strategies are wonderful. They're very helpful, but they won't heal you. You know, to fully heal, you have to address these old unconscious programs that we access through the body.
Well, and most doctors don't want to spend more than 7 to 10 minutes with the
Well, they
patient.
can't, you know, they can't. I
Right.
mean, if you're trying to make a living as a physician,
Yeah.
it's really difficult, you know, especially in Canada when we're paid by the patient, right? We're paid per patient. And it's like we get paid about $30 per patient, right, that we see. So you got to see, you know, 30, 40 people a day to be able to, you know, meet your, you know, make a living and pay your staff and do all this kind of stuff, which really degrades the quality of care, in my opinion. You know, if you can only give people, you know, and on top of that, what it does is it puts doctors under a severe amount of pressure that they don't need, because you really need to be able to connect with the people that are in front of you. That's how you heal people, is that you know, give them a felt sense, as Daniel Siegel said, that they're feeling felt, that they're what they're saying to you as a doctor is you feel what they're feeling. And in that connection, that social engagement connection, that's where a lot of healing occurs. And I think that we're losing that a lot in medicine because of this time pressure.
Last question, since you love dinner as your favorite meal.
Sure.
If you could have any 3 people at your dinner table, past or present, dead or alive, and you've never met them before, who would be at your dinner table?
Oh boy, Freud, probably.
Of course.
Who else is in there? Probably a comedian of some kind.
I was
Maybe
going to say,
maybe Kate McKinnon. I love Kate McKinnon. I think she's hilarious. I would
hilarious.
love to talk with her. So Freud, Kate McKinnon, and
Is there a musician in there?
yeah. Let's see. Who would I pick? You know, maybe. Oh no, probably Jim Carrey. Yeah, probably
Wow.
Jim Carrey. Just because, you know, he's seen the other side. He's seen what
Yeah,
it's like to be like, have everything, and then just kind of go, you know, this is really not what it's cracked up to be, which is true. And I think the more you get into your body and the more you realize that you have your own answers, the less you need that external validation. And we're in a society that is just literally bred in external validation. You look at Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. There all is this, you know, comparison-itis. Comparison is the thief of joy. And so that would be like Jim Carrey and Freud. Poor Freud. I mean,
what a dinner table that would be.
He would just be out of it.
Well, I'd love to interview Jim Carrey. Well, we've got a lot in common, not just both of our fathers taking their own lives, but the fact that we're pouring into others in a way that we never thought we would, and paying it forward, and just trying to be the best versions of ourselves every day. Man, fascinating conversation. We got through 4
We got through it.
Power outages.
Power outages. Yes. Awesome.
One of the best interviews I think I've ever had, man. That was, you know, I hope I asked the right questions. A new space.
Oh, you did, for sure.
You know, the Healthy Living with Hoot podcast is sort of a spin-off of some of the other things. I want to do a life coaching one, and I'm doing the FYI Follow Your Intuition one, as well as a sports deli. So glad you were able to come in here, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for doing what you do, man. Like it really is reaching people. It really does help people. If we're going through a place after this pandemic where we're so separate from each other, and we're still in this place where we're worried about each other. Like, is this person have the virus? Are they, you know, so we really have to bring that connection back. And if we don't, we're in trouble.
Oh man. All right. Well, hey, we'll stay in touch, and anything I can do for you. You're down south. West, but south. I want to go northwest, because man, the Vancouver is on my bucket list.
Sure, come on up.
So yeah, I'll try to get up there. You know, once maybe the stipulations change a little bit. I don't know how strict it is still, but I know Australia and Canada was real strict for a while there.
Yeah, come on up, eh?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Dr. Russ, find him on Instagram, The Anxiety MD, and you know, check out his book. It's a fascinating read, and it won't hurt you. It can only help you. All right, much love, Doc. Appreciate the time. We'll talk.
Thanks,
soon.
man. See you again.
All right, talk to you later. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. In order to be the best version of yourself, You got to go outside your comfort zone a little bit and, pay attention to your body. And when those signs come into your path, don't run away from them because, they're trying to tell you something. All right, everybody. Enjoy these unbelievable outtakes from today's podcast. Still waiting on Dr. Russ Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen. He's standing me up.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, what's up, Doc?
I'm hanging in there. How about you?
Oh, man, just got my 325 push-ups in, my 5 sets of core, and I'll do my lunges and my lunge jumps later.
Nice. So you do a lot of your stuff at home then?
Do everything at home. I don't go to the Y anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I just started getting back into the gym. I've worked out with weights since I've been about 18 years old. During pandemic, can't go. We did find one gym that was at one of the universities here. It was kind of like an academic university, a real academic, like no real school teams out of it. And it had a huge gym. And what it did was it put all the machines about 25 feet apart. So there's like a lat machine, and then there's and it covered the entire gym. So you would go in this circuit, right? Clean off the equipment, all that kind of stuff. But it was about a half-hour drive, but couldn't keep it up. It was just too far to go.
Yeah, that's definitely far. Yeah, I started, I've done weights my whole life too, but then I started doing push-ups. I started with 5 and 10, and then I was like, man, I can do 25, and then I can do 35 and then 50. And so now I do sets of 100. It's crazy. And everybody watches me on my TikTok live. So it's very interesting.
Nice. You're gogginsing it.
Hey, whatever we can do to move and be a better version of ourselves every day, right?
So important, especially with the trauma history, because trauma makes us go immobile, and basically it becomes a way of life.
Oh, does it ever? You can either go one of two ways, and they're both your reality.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do a quick formal intro, not my normal sports deli intro. It's the Healthy Living with Hoot intro, so they're a little bit shorter.
Okay.
And we will rock and roll. I've been looking forward to this. Man, I can't tell you. There's a lot of people that'll be coming on here, but this was one that I don't listen to people usually for more than 10 to 15 minutes. But that day I listened to you for over 2 hours. And
on Clubhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a fascinating discussion and plot twists, and it was just a wonderful time. So I really
thanks,
enjoyed
man.
it. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
All right, let's rock and roll.
Okay, for a personality.
We have some technical difficulties there, ladies and gentlemen. Take 2. I like that screenshot. Now that's a face. What does that face tell you guys? That face says that's an interesting face that he's making right there. That face says questioning somebody's authenticity. That's what I see in that face. I don't know if Doc can hear me or not, but we are frozen. Yep, there we go. Take 2, ladies and gentlemen. We will see Doc back here in a minute. And when this first happened, when I would lose people, it would stress me out. But we just roll with the punches. Dr. Kennedy's power went out, ladies and gentlemen. He literally just messaged me. Holy flick! My power just went out. We got power here, so I don't know where he's at, but we are good to go here. Well, I'm waiting for Dr. Kennedy. I figured I'd try some of these filters. I've never seen these before. That one says Zoom. Oh, that's a LGBTQ perimeter filter. Interesting. There's a dog barking with roses in its mouth. Oh, I'm on television. Looks like a 1950s television. A bunch of emojis on the perimeter of the screen. Christmas lights. Looks like I'm in outer space there. Another television with the old school dials. Oh, I look like, Phantom of the Opera, or I look like I'm a bank robber. Graduation cap on. I'm looking like Marx from back in the day. The actor. Oh, I got a mustache. Interesting. Love the mustache. Oh, and now I got some sunglasses on with the circular sunglasses. And now I look like I'm going snowmobiling. Oh, I'm playing a 3D video game, watching a 3D movie. I don't know what the hell that was under my eyes. Oh, I have a little rose on my hat. That's cute. I think it's supposed to be behind my ear, possibly. Well, that was fun. Any other filters here while I wait for Dr. Kennedy, the anxiety doctor. Oh, there we go. I'm a cow now. I'm complete animated cow. Oh man, that is phenomenal.
Well.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too. Like, I'm on generator power now, so I'm guaranteed that it'll stay on for sure. It's just I don't have peripheral lights, so it's just an audio podcast, right? Like we don't have a video as well.
No, I do video also,
Oh,
but it
okay.
looks good. I
Does it
can't.
look okay?
Oh
Like it's
yeah, it's
pretty
plenty
dark,
of
but
light.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go for it again. I just have to sort of send a thing to my friend saying
Oh yeah.
1 o'clock. Hey, comma. I'm going to do that podcast after all, so I'm going to miss the 1 o'clock call today. Okay, let's do
sir. Round 2.
it. Can we address it or what?
So you were saying that.
Oh, you're going to edit it together?
Oh yeah, I just edited it because we're not live.
Okay, because you'll see a distinct difference between the light.
Oh yeah, it's all good. We're gonna have take 3 here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if the generator went out, but we are having technical difficulties once again. I thought I might move to Canada, but I'm having second thoughts now, ladies and gentlemen. Laughter is the answer. In the previous podcast with the other Dr. Kennedy, we talked about moving your mouse to the other side of the desk. And today we are learning about humor. Dr. Kennedy's gone. Oh man, that is hilarious. So DRK, not to be confused with JFK, has vacated the premises, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to get another text message that said the generator is now out in addition to the power. Oh, this is fascinating, phenomenal stuff. Wow, this is, man. After 57 minutes of waiting, ladies and gentlemen, we get to 3 minutes and 12 seconds back into the podcast before the generator dies. Oh man, you missed all the laughing.
Was that you or was that me?
I think it was you.
Okay.
But man, I was dying. When I edit that in, that is going to be phenomenal content. I got to tell you.
Just that it just goes out. But the power, I mean, I'm on generator, so it should just stay consistent. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to carry on with this.
Yeah, this is great. Wait, click the video so we can keep going with the video.
Sure.
Your video's out.
Yeah.
Click start video because your video's off.
Oh, okay. There we go.
So it was hilarious. So I basically was like, in the last podcast with the other Dr. Kennedy, he talked about moving the mouse to the other side of the desk so that you could change the position of your hips in order to heal. Today, I thought about moving to Canada, but now I'm having second thoughts.
Nice one. Yeah.
Oh man, that is hilarious. I literally was making myself cry.
So we get kind of double whammied in a way. Okay, so it looks like my power came back.
We have the lighting back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so my light is just like, oh, wow, how did that happen?
That is phenomenal.
So we'll see. I'll just keep. I was a stand-up comic for 10 years, so I'm.
Man, this is phenomenal. Oh man, this is see, he's trying to throw me off with my line of thinking here, and comedy is definitely one of the solutions, as we talked about earlier. But I'm not going to lose my train of thought, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask the question that I'm planning on asking next, and nothing, not one thing, not one single thing is going to throw me for a loop. No pun intended. He just talked about looping with the brain. There he goes. Once again, ladies and gentlemen. Oh man. This is man, his content must have been phenomenal. Stand-up comedian, as a neuroscientist, as an MD. Man, that wow. That's phenomenal. Stop laughing. Oh man. Bounce, bow, bow. You should find this quite amusing, Doc.
I actually do. Now, if it wasn't for the fact that I screwed up our meeting last week, I would be laughing a lot more. But
oh, you're fine, man. It's all good.
It is one of those things.
So this is the next question I wanted to ask you after your spiritual journey.
I don't know what's going to happen from this point on. Like,
it should be okay.
It should be okay, but it just shows you
Mother Nature. You never know, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh God.
I just said that as an NMD, to be a stand-up comedian, man, you must have had some phenomenal content. Man,
it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. I mean, I think one of my jokes that I really liked was the fact that I have health anxiety and I'm a doctor at the same time, which was, which is a really bad combination because, I don't just get regular diseases. I get the fancy, dermatomyositis. I get all the fancy fatal diseases. I don't get the easy ones. And what I would do is I would order tests on myself because here in Canada, the tests are free because, you need a doctor to order them, but they allow you to order tests on yourself. So, I got an MRI on my head. If I had a headache for more than a couple of days, if my stomach was bugging me, I get an ultrasound. I think you could throw a couple of pap smears in there too. At some point, I was very paranoid about things.
God damn.
So that's kind of, that's a very short version of that joke, but
thanks for joining us today for this amazing podcast. I truly hope that you felt inspired, motivated, and that we added value to your life so that you can be the best version of yourself. Remember, you can always send us an email to healthylivingwithhoot@gmail.com, and you can always check me out on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok @Mike Hootner. And take care of yourselves, everyone. Literally. You can always call the Suicide Lifeline in English at 800-273-8255, in Spanish at 888-628-9454. And for anyone who may be deaf or hard of hearing, you can call 800-799-4889. You can also dial 988 anytime. And they are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days of the year. Thanks for joining us again right here in the Healthy Living with Hoot podcast. Much love, everybody. Peace.